broken a bone? Or perhaps your cat or your dog has. Much of the time fractures in humans can be managed, particularly when we're young, by things like casts, but not all of the time. Sometimes we require surgery to repair broken bones, and particularly if you have fractures in strange places or where there's a lot of movement that a cast can't control, then we're going to need some sort of internal fixation. One of the more common methods of repairing fractures uses bone plates. And today on the PD Pet Care Vlogs, I'd like to introduce you to some research that Healthy Pets New Zealand has helped fund, exploring whether 3D printing of plates can be just as good as the conventionally manufactured plates as well. So I'm Dr. Cath Watson and welcome to the PD Pet Care Vlogs. Now, this research that's been funded by Healthy Pets New Zealand was undertaken by Professor Andrew Worth at Massey University, very talented surgeon. What he wanted to know was if we take a conventionally manufactured plate, so this is a titanium plate that's made out of either cast or wrought titanium, and then it's cut by a precision CAD-driven machine into a specific formulation. Not specific to the patient, but basically a general pattern that can have multiple uses. With those plates, they have to be modified usually within surgery, so bent slightly to fit the shape of bones, because unfortunately bones are not all nice and straight, and contoured to fit the bone so that they can have the maximum impact, because obviously something sticking away from the bone is not going to be as strong and secure as something that follows the contours. So what Professor Worth wanted to explore, given that we now have this amazing 3D printing technology, if we can computer generate a model for a specific patient's bone that's been fractured and we want to repair it, can we 3D print a plate out of titanium? So this is using titanium powder and using a 3D printer to selective laser melt that titanium powder into the specific shape that we want. This has been available for a long time, but what we don't know is, are those 3D printed plates actually as strong and as good and last as long as a conventionally manufactured plate? So this Healthy Pets funded research by Professor Worth was aiming to answer exactly that question. So are they as stiff? Are they able to cope over time the same as a conventionally manufactured plate? So the fatigue life is particularly important when it comes to internal fixation when you're repairing fractures, because obviously we're not talking about a single impact. This piece of metal that is against the bone is going to have to stay there until that fracture heals, and that could be anywhere from 6 weeks, 12 weeks, potentially longer, depending on how serious the fracture is and obviously how compliant the patient is as well. So that's quite a long period of time that those titanium plates potentially have to last. So what he did is he took 12 plates of each type, so conventionally manufactured and this what's called additive manufactured, essentially 3D printed plates, and tested them as far as their bending stiffness, how they performed as far as a single cycle pressure, what level did they no longer function, and then cyclic fatigue testing, so repeat stress on those plates over time. Now the really cool thing was that there was no difference between the different manufacturing methods as far as the actual bending stiffness. So both plates actually work perfectly well as far as the strength resisting bending forces, which obviously when you've got a fracture, you've got an unstable bone, you're trying to counter those bending forces so the bone can actually heal. So that's great. The 3D printed plates were actually stronger to a single cycle failure, which is kind of good, but in the real world we want to know over time, and unfortunately they did fail earlier under cyclic fatigue testing, so repeat stress, so they are a more brittle plate. That's not ideal in the real world. Doesn't mean they can't be used, but at this point it does mean if we want to use specific 3D printed plates, which is great from surgical planning and intraoperative use, because you've got something that's made for that patient, we are going to have to choose the cases pretty carefully, because if you've got a fracture that's going to require or is going to have stress on it for a long period of time, these plates are not ideal. So great to have that information out there. It means that we can be much more particular about when these plates are used for specific fractures. So if you are in the unfortunate situation that your cat or dog ends up with a fracture and is going to have it repaired with a plate, maybe you want to ask, what are they going to be using?